is my first time going live on how church works on a phone, so I don't know if it works. But the question I want to ask anyone watching this is, how do you love your neighbor? Do you love your neighbor? How can you say for sure that you love your neighbor? And in particular, who is my neighbor? And related to that, how can you love your neighbor if you don't even know who they are, if you don't even know them? Can you love your neighbor if you don't know who they are? How is Yeshua going to mete out judgment on neighbor love? What measure is he going to use? Will he be convinced, for example, if I say, well, I made sure that I only knew 10 people because I was isolated, and I took care of those 10 people really well? Does knowing your neighbor create, does it put an onus on us? Do we have an onus on us to know our neighbor? Because we can say we should love our neighbor, but then the question arises, who is my neighbor? And even when Yeshua answers the Pharisee, one of the Parashim, about, who is my neighbor, he talks about running into somebody, but then can't we orchestrate our lives now so that we never run into anyone, ever? Can't we sequester ourselves in our homes, don't we? We don't even know our neighbors. We don't have communities in any true sense anymore. What if I don't want to know my neighbor? How do I learn to love my neighbor? How do I learn to want to know my neighbor? How do I care about my neighbor as much as I care about myself? Do I go out of my way to find them? Do I do it with some kind of scheme or plan or approach? How can I say that I love them if I don't want to know them? What do I mean when I say I want to know them? Do I mean that I want to know their names? That I want to know that I can wave at them when we're both in the same grocery store? That we can recognize one another's face and make the right syllables to say each other's names when we check our mail? What does it mean to know my neighbor? How do I share words with my neighbor? How do I get into their lives? It's like I need a pry bar. Everyone's so busy, so inaccessible. What do I do if my neighbor doesn't want to know me? What do I do if my neighbor insists on just meaningless drivel, emptiness? How do I find my neighbor's heart? What do I do when I'm faced with my neighbor and I don't want to find their heart and their mind and I just want to move on? Who should change first? Should my neighbor change or should I change? Should you change, God? Doesn't something have to change? This command is so loaded. How do I do to my neighbor what I want done to me? What if I'm a fool? What if my measure's so wrong? Wouldn't I want my neighbor to exceed my own measure and love me out of my folly and pursue me? There's such a lack of love. Mashiach talked about love growing cold. Love growing cold. Has my love grown cold? They speak of it like it's a global or large-scale phenomena. I don't want to be part of that. Do I only shine better than, just a little bit better than my peers, but I'm part of love growing cold? Help us to want to know our neighbors. Help us. Change us. Give us opportunities too, because even if we seek our neighbors, and even if we go full throttle, we may be met with just more coldness. We need your help. There's coldness in me, there's coldness in my neighbor. Help us to start conversations. Help us to downgrade the importance of not being awkward. The idea of delivery and awkwardness. Who cares? Is anyone going to care about awkwardness when they stand in front of your throne, Mashiach? Will awkwardness not be a thing when we're judged by you? Because when we talk to neighbors, awkwardness is what's settled, what's expected, It's so important. Make room inside me to love my neighbor. I think a lot of the space is taken up. A lot of my spaces are occupied with loving myself. It's not even loving. Low order. Make space in my spaces for love. Help us to love our neighbors. Help us to find out if our neighbors are suffering. Help us to find out if our neighbors are sick, despairing, depressed. Give us opportunities with our neighbors, more than we've ever seen. Yeah. Yeshua, bless us. God of Israel, teach us how to love all the nations. Teach us how to love everyone. Teach us how to be a neighbor to everyone. Teach us how to neighbor up with people of every tribe and nation and tongue. Help us to truly love people as they are. Show us how to even see our neighbor. Help us to see them the way you see them, that we'd want to love them. We'd want to do differently. Thank you, Yeshua. Amen.